The phone rang long after midnight, slicing through the silence like a blade. "Mom," Lucy's voice trembled, cracked, barely human. "I'm at the police station. He hit me," and told them I attacked him. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then she said something that made my blood turn cold. "There's an officer here. He keeps looking at me like he recognizes me." That was all it took. I didn't stop to think. No coat, no lights, no hesitation. The city blurred past my windshield as I sped through red lights that meant nothing. My daughter was alone somewhere, accused of a crime committed against her. "Which station?" I demanded, gripping the steering wheel until my hands shook. "3rd Avenue, she whispered between sobs. My stomach sank. 3rd Avenue, I knew that place. I knew the men who worked there, men who smiled at abusers over coffee while victims drowned in paperwork. 12 minutes later, I was there. I burst through the glass doors, the fluorescent lights inside cutting across the darkness like interrogation beams. The air reeked of stale coffee and fear. A young officer at the desk froze when he saw me. His name tag read John. His face went pale. His hand trembled mid-key. "Ma'am," he started, but the words died in his throat. "Where's my daughter?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp enough to draw blood. He swallowed hard. Judge Miller. The title hit me like an echo from another life. I hadn't been on the bench for years, but clearly he remembered. I didn't realize the detainee was your daughter," he stammered. "Her husband filed the report first. Said she attacked him. He came in bleeding. There's protocol." "Protocol," I repeated, tasting the word like poison. "Where is she?" John pointed shakily toward a gray corridor. "Holding room, ma'am? Detective Sergeant Andrews is reviewing the case himself. He and Mr. Milmar are acquainted." Of course they were. Men like Richard always had friends in the right places. "Take me to her," I ordered. John hesitated, then something in my tone convinced him. Our footsteps echoed down the hallway, an old, familiar sound I'd heard in courtrooms for decades. He opened the door to a small room with flickering lights. Lucy sat there, knees drawn to her chest, mascara streaking her swollen face. She looked up when she saw me. "Mom?" she whispered, collapsing into my arms. I held her tightened, felt the bruises under her sleeves. Not fresh. Old, faded reminders of a story she'd never told. "Lucy," I whispered, trembling. "How long has this been happening?" She sobbed. "I didn't want you to think I failed, that I was weak." My heart shattered. "You didn't fail, sweetheart. He did." But even as I said it, I knew this was only the beginning, because outside that door, Richard was already rewriting the story. And I was about to rewrite it back one lie at a time. The walls of the precinct felt colder the deeper we went. My footsteps echoed like old ghosts of the courtroom I once ruled. I wasn't Judge Miller anymore. Just a mother whose daughter had been branded a criminal. Lucy's body trembled in my arms. Beneath her sweater sleeve, the bruises told their own story, the kind that never makes it into police reports. I gently lifted her chin. "How long has this been going on, Lucy?" She couldn't look at me. "I didn't want you to see me like this, Mom. You always helped women like me. I thought, if I told you, you'd think I was weak." My throat tightened. "You're not weak," I whispered. "You survived. That takes strength." I turned to Officer John, who stood frozen by the door. Guilt all over his young face. "Officer," I said, steady but cold, "I need to see the incident report. And I want to speak to Richard and Detective Andrews now." He hesitated, then blurted out, "Judge, I remember you. 10 years ago. My sister's case Morales, V's Morales. You gave her a restraining order that saved her life." His voice cracked. "I didn't realize Lucy was your daughter." Richard came in calm, bleeding a little, saying she'd gone crazy. The detective believed him. They're friends. They were having coffee before she even got here. Coffee? My stomach turned. I knew this playbook. I'd seen it before. The polished husband with the shallow cut, the trembling wife painted as unstable. The system always leaned toward whoever looked neatest in a photo. "Where is he?" I asked. "In Andrew's office," John said, pointing down the hall. "Then that's where I'm going." John tried to stop me, but there was no force on earth that could. My daughter's abuser was sitting comfortably behind a desk, rewriting history with charm and a tailored suit. Not tonight. Not under my watch. When I pushed open the office door, both men looked up. Andrews, older, balding, still smug, and Richard, sitting like he owned the place, bandaged arm resting casually on the chair. "Julia," Richard said smoothly, as if greeting an old friend. "Didn't expect you here." How could I not be? I shot back. "You hurt my daughter and then filed a false report. You think that bandage makes you innocent?" Andrews raised his hands. "Julia, let's stay calm. There's protocol." "Protocol." I cut him off, stepping forward. "Did you examine Lucy's injuries? Did you photograph her bruise? Or did you just take his pictures because they were easier to look at?" The detective's silence answered for him. Richard cleared his throat, trying to regain his performance. "Julia, she's unstable. She needs help." I saw it, the flicker behind his eyes. He'd rehearsed this moment. But I'd spent 34 years reading liars for a living. He was about to learn what it felt like to face someone who couldn't be fooled. Because the next words out of my mouth would tear his perfect lie apart, one question at a time. The air inside that office was thick, not with tension, but with arrogance. Richard's arrogance. He leaned back in the chair, his bandaged arm perfectly angled for sympathy. His voice was calm, measured, too polished to be honest. "I came here first," he said smoothly. "I followed the law. Lucy attacked me with a knife. I have the wound to prove it." "You mean the wound you gave yourself?" I said, my tone razor sharp. He laughed softly. "You've lost perspective, Julia. I know this is emotional for you. But Lucy has been unstable. You've seen it, haven't you?" Andrews shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. He wanted to believe Richard it was easier than admitting he'd been conned. I took a step forward. "Tell me, detective," I said, locking eyes with him. "Did you even check Lucy for injuries before accepting his version? Did you notice the bruises on her wrists? The marks on her back? Silence. The kind that burns?" Richard's hand twitched. For a split second, the mask slipped. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed. "You weren't there." "No," I said, leaning closer. "But I know your type. I've sentenced men like you for decades. The ones who think a good suit can erase what they've done behind closed doors." Andrews tried to interrupt again, but I raised a hand. "If you process my daughter without a proper forensic exam, without interviewing witnesses, I will have your badge in 24 hours. I'll make sure every prosecutor in this city knows. You let your friendship with an abuser cloud your duty." That landed. Andrews swallowed hard. Richard's smirk vanished. "John?" I called toward the door. The young officer stepped in, startled. "Take Lucy to the hospital. Full medical examination. Photographs of every mark, every bruise. Get a report signed tonight." Andrews hesitated, but said nothing. John nodded and hurried out. Richard jumped up, losing his composure. "This is ridiculous!" "I'm the victim here. The burns on her back say otherwise," I snapped before I could stop myself. His eyes widened, the first real sign of fear. He hadn't realized I knew. Andrews looked at him sharply. "Burns," he repeated. Richard stammered. "She's lying. She's making things up." But it was too late. The truth was unraveling. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Elaine," I said when my elder daughter answered, groggy, "I need you to come to the 3rd Avenue precinct. Bring the flash drive Lucy gave you 2 months ago." A pause. "Mom, how do you know about that?" "Because I know my daughters," I replied. "And I know Lucy planned for this day." When I hung up, Richard's face was white as ash. "What flash drive?" he demanded. I smiled coldly. "The one that will end this charade?" He thought he'd written the perfect story, but I had just found the proof that would burn every page of it. The precinct buzzed like a hive when I returned. The sun had begun to rise, bleeding pale gold across the city's skyline in new day, but the same war. John met me at the door. "Judge," he said breathlessly. "Richard's lawyer is here, Robert Clark. He's demanding we release his client. Says the evidence is circumstantial." I reached into my pocket and held up the small black flash drive Elaine had brought. "Then let's give him something unquestionable." When I entered the detective's office, Robert and Richard were already waiting. Both looked perfectly composed, like they'd practiced this scene. "Julia Miller," Robert greeted, all smooth professionalism. "Your daughter assaulted my client. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment." I placed the flash drive on the desk. The sound was small, but it silenced the room. "There's your emotion," I said coldly. 3 months of recordings. Every threat. Every hit. Every time Richard told my daughter, no one would believe her. Richard's face drained of color. "That's illegal." "Those can't be used." "In domestic violence cases," I interrupted, "they can. Especially when the victim feared for her life." Andrews plugged the drive into his computer. The first audio clip filled the air. Richard's voice, sharp and cruel. "You think anyone will believe you over me? You're pathetic, Lucy. If you tell anyone, I'll destroy you." A sob, a crash, the sound of a slap. The room froze. The detective's expression hardened. Robert's confident smile faltered. "There are more," I said. "Different dates, different nights. Every one of them." Andrews turned slowly toward Richard. "Mr. Miller, you might want to call another lawyer." Richard stood, furious. "This is manipulation. She's twisting everything." But his voice was cracking, the mask gone. The more he shouted, the clearer the truth became. Within the hour, Lucy's medical report arrived. Broken ribs, old wrist fractures, burns, bruises, in different stages of healing. Each mark was a chapter of the horror she'd lived. And now every chapter had evidence. Andrews signed the paperwork. "Richard Miller, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, battery, and continuous domestic abuse." The cuffs clicked around his wrists. His perfect life collapsed in one metallic sound. I exhaled, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. Justice had finally started to move, not because the system was flawless, but because someone had refused to let it fail. Hours later, I stood in the hospital beside Lucy. She was awake, fragile but safe. "He's not getting out," I told her softly. "Not this time." She smiled faintly through tears. "For the first time, Mom? I believe you." I brushed her hair back, feeling the weight of everything we had survived. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning, because for every Lucy who found her voice, there were countless others still trapped in silence. And I wasn't done fighting for them yet. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.